again. So welcome everyone. um, just because maybe when I will like cut this video so we don't have that beginning part because it was terrible. But just to introduce you guys, this is Luis. Luis and I are partners in Sacred Die, and Luis is the lead developer, pretty much the built by himself Griptape, and so he is knows it better than anyone else, obviously. And yeah, so he's going to walk you through everything, and basically he's going to build an application, an MVP of the secret auctions, and we're going to have do 2 live sessions a week. We were just going to do 1, but we decided to do 2 because we couldn't decide whether to do React or Vue. And we realized that a lot of people are comfortable with React, but then a lot of other people were really interested in Vue. So what we decided to do is do 2. So on Tuesdays, we're going to do a React live code, and on Wednesdays, we're going to do the same thing, but in Vue. So yeah, so that's that. And then Luis, you can take it away.
Sure.
I'm going to maximize that. Luis, are you sharing your entire screen or just... I don't think your microphone is working either, Luis, or can you talk? Maybe it is. We lost Luis for a second.
Am I back? Or
yeah, you're back. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Okay, cool. So let me reshare my screen.
Okay, and to get Luis's screen to be the one showing, we do this. Okay, perfect.
Awesome, guys. So, hey, everyone. I'm Luis. I'm the lead developer for Griptape, and today we're going to start building like an MVP app for the secret auctions. One, I would like to give some advice of how to approach the project and how to get started. So firstly, for all of you who haven't read the welcome packet, I recommend you guys to go to the welcome packet and see all the information there. And most importantly, you guys need to have done the getting set up, which is basically, preparing your environment to start working, well, connecting to the blockchain and all that stuff. I'm going to go through the last 2 steps, which is mostly focused on instantiating the auction factory contract and creating auctions so we can list them on their application. So, but yeah, if there's any questions in regards to that, don't hesitate to ask on Discord, and we can help you. So in terms of what we're going to do today, basically we want to create a React application that connects to the blockchain and list the auctions that we are going to create using the CLI. So right now we're not going to go through building the UI to create the auction on the directly there, but we're gonna at least, well, not at least, but we're gonna list the auctions on the site. So we are going to, so we can prove that we are connected to a blockchain and that we are calling a query message on the contract. So let me go through the last 2 steps. So, okay, this is interesting because, okay, cool. Yeah, so as you can see, all the steps have some videos to help you go through the different steps you need to do to install Kepler and all that. I have everything already installed and ready, so I'm gonna just move on to the last two steps, which is instantiated the Action Factory contract. So here, so on Secret Network and any other Cosmos-based change that have custom button enabled, in order to start interacting with the contract, you first need to upload the contract to the blockchain. What that means is that you compile your contract, and that compiled version, you can upload it to the blockchain. And once it's stored in a blockchain, you get a code ID, so which is like an identifier that you can use to then instantiate your contract. So think of it as it has some resemblance to object-oriented programming, in which you first create a class and then you instantiate to get an object. So it's kind of the same here. So first of all, we're going to instantiate the auction factory contract, and in order to do that, we need to obviously have secret2li installed, and then this is the command that we're going to use. So I'm going to copy this command, and I'm going to go to my command line. I think this is good enough, right?
Yeah, and I can see it. And as we go through this, guys, anyone who's, I know we have some people who are new to development here. There's no dumb questions for during this. So if you're new to terminal or you're just if anything it seems like is going too fast for you, reach out to us on Discord and we'll walk you through it. You can even share screens and stuff during this hackathon. We're here to help. So yeah, Luis, we can see exactly what you're doing. So
okay, perfect. So I'm going to paste that command, and as you can see, we need to there are some placeholders here that we need to fill. So the first one is from. So this is the key, the name of your key when you added your account. In this case, I have a key called fail. So I'm going to use that. And it's the main account that we're going to use throughout all the tutorials. And then we need to put in a label. So the label of you instantiate a contract is like an ID to identify that specific contracts, that a specific contract. There's no way that two versions of the same, two instantiations of the same contract or two instances of the same contract cannot have the same label. So think of it as a unique ID throughout all the different contracts. So we're gonna just put, in this case, auction, live stream 1. This contract. Oh, actually, auction factory live stream 1. We're gonna set the label for that, and I'm just going to hit enter. So this -y option that you can set is to automatically run the transaction without confirm the signing. So I'm just going to do that. And as you can see, we get a JSON. Obviously, it's all plain and compact, not formatted. But as you can see, we have, and you can see that also in the, well, you cannot see it here. Oh yeah, you can. This is kind of what you get when you instantiate the contract. And the important thing that you need to know from here is the TX hash property, because this is like an ID for the transaction, and we could use it to query what was the response when we interacted with, when we did this transaction. So in this case, I'm gonna copy this one, the TX hash, and then I'm gonna run this command, which basically is querying the transaction. So essentially what I'm doing here is once I run the transaction on the blockchain, then I want to see what was the result so I can query the response of the transaction, let's say, doing this, or the result of the transaction.
This is a really common pattern that you guys will do when you're working with a CLI, where you do a transaction, you get back a hash, and then you query to sort of decrypt it so that you can see what you got back from it. The other thing to note, Luis, I don't know if you mentioned, but in that original contract transaction, CLI TX compute instantiate 2496, we also passed in the auction contract 2760. That is the contract that will be for each individual auction. And we need to tell the factory contract that when we create an auction, when we tell the factory contract to create an auction, that it needs to instantiate an auction of type 2760. That's why you're defining that right there. I don't know if you said that, so I just wanted to point that out. The other thing is just to really broadly, we're doing a lot of CLI stuff right now. This is like prerequisite stuff. When you're developing, a lot of the time you spend a good amount of time in the CLI, but this isn't Griptape stuff. We realize that. We just want to we'll get this out of the way, and then we'll dig into coding.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, exactly. As Sandy mentioned, and this is more of something of how the auction, the whole contract or the set of contracts work, because the auctions the secret auction works with two contracts. The first is the factory contract, and the second is the auction contract. And basically, what we're doing right now is that we have a factory that can instantiate different auctions, and the auction itself is a contract. So when we instantiate the factory contract, we need to have already deployed or uploaded or stored the auction contract on the blockchain, which in this case is on the wonder if this is right. Yeah, but it's stored with the code ID 2760. Oh yeah, it's right.
Yeah,
and
right.
the code hash, which is something that you get when you instantiate a contract. When you upload a contract. So once we instantiate the contract, I just formatted the JSON a little bit so you can see the result. You can see that we get this message as a response. The important part that we need to analyze or to get is this output logs array, which contains this object that has an array called attributes, and that has an object that contains a key and a value, and this value property is the one that we are interested in. So this contains the contract address of the instantiated contract. So in this case, what we did is we took the code that is for the factory contract, the code ID, which is 2496, and then we instantiate it. So now we have let's say an object in object-oriented programming. So we can call messages and queries to that contract, and the address is this one, right? So take that address and put it somewhere because you're going to need it later. So I'm just gonna, in another screen I have here, I'm just gonna paste it out there, and we're gonna move on. So next step is, once we have the instantiated contract, as you can see, this is the last step in this section, and as I mentioned, this is the value that you're looking for, right? So the next step is to create an auction, or to create we're going to create, let's say, 3 auctions for now, just to get started. So
and again, we're doing this with the CLI because creating an auction with Griptape is a little bit more advanced, and we want to start today with just querying auctions. But we need some auctions to exist in order to do that. So the goal of the end of today is to be able to list all the auctions that have been created, and so we need some. So that's what he's doing it manually. But we won't be doing it this way once we have the application up and running, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct. So first, we're going to, try to have something to interact with. We're going to start with queries more than messages, because queries are more easy to learn. But in terms of, well, that's not really true, but it's easier to get started from somewhere. And I think querying to the blockchain is a simple task to do. So we're going to go for it. So yeah, so getting back to create auctions, we need to create an auction. And basically, creating an auction requires a two-step process. So the first step is to run a message, or to call a message on the token that we want to sell in the auction, that is called increase allowance. Okay, so in general, just for you to understand what this is doing, is we are giving, let's say, permission that the factory contract can send tokens on your behalf, basically. So that's what's the increase allowance do, basically. So, and as I said, this is for the token that we want to sell. So we need to choose from the glossary. So if you go to the glossary, and for any who's not, who haven't go to that part yet, we list all the different tokens that we're going to have available. And for those of you who provided your secret address when you did the sign up on the hackathon page, you have already tokens for each of the different tokens. Well, you have tokens for each of the different ones that we have. In case that you don't have any, you can just you can ask on Discord. So you can provide us your secret address, and we will send you tokens. So yeah, so as you can see, we have different tokens: Plan B, Girl, Blind, New Deal, Brick House, Powell, Toy Machine, Alien Workshop, Chocolate, and New York. So you need to choose two tokens. One is the token that you're going to use to sell, and the second one is the token that people can bid on to get those tokens. So we're gonna select one for, in this case, to be the sell token. So I'm gonna choose Plan B. Well, let's choose another one that is a little more interesting. Let's choose Brick House. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna save the address of the Brick House, and I'm gonna move on to create auctions. And then I'm gonna take this code, go to my terminal, paste it there. So again, there are some placeholders here that we need to fill. So the first thing that we need to do is to replace sell token address with the address of the token that you want to sell. In this case, I choose Brick House. So I'm gonna get again the Brick House address and paste it there. Then I need to, in the spender field, in the spender property of the increase allowance object, I need to set the auction factory contract address, which basically was the address that we got from the value property of the first element of the attributes.
Just to Can I just take one step and just explain? So basically, the way the contract works and the way it was set up is that when you create a contract, in order for everything to work, the bidder, the person who's creating the contract, the owner of the contract, sorry, the seller, the person who's creating the contract, needs to send his funds into escrow, basically send them to the contract. The contract bidder who developed the contract decided he didn't want there to be a lot of auctions out there where the seller had not actually put tokens into the auction. And that it would be really annoying for bidders to be bidding and then win the auction, but the seller never put money in. It just didn't. It was terrible from a UX standpoint. So what he did was he utilized this idea of an allowance, where basically what you're doing here is you're saying you're sending a transaction, or Luis is sending a transaction where he is saying that the auction factory contract has the right to take 1 million U secret, or in this case, U plan B, from his wallet at a future date. And that's what allowances do. So the process is you create an allowance and then you create the auction. When the auction is being created, it first checks, is there an allowance? If not, it just doesn't create it. It fails. If there is an allowance, it takes it from the owner, and then the auction gets added to the factory. So that's one of the reasons we're doing the CLI, is because this is important when we're actually doing the development, to understand how this whole thing works. It's a little bit complicated. One of the more complicated ones I've seen on Secret Network. So yeah, anyway, go ahead, Luis.
Yep. So, and just to, just for you guys, so you can see, let me see the amount of brick house that I have. Okay.
Kepler, yeah.
So I'm going to go to Pulsar 2. Oh, I need to add brick house so I can see how much I have.
I think that's a different wallet.
Oh yeah, whale. It's a wallet that we need. Bear with me, guys, with Kepler. So I still don't have the bird house token. So I'm gonna add the bird house token. So this is a bird house token, and as you can see, I have 250 bird house. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say, okay, what is the amount that I want to sell? What is the amount that I want to increase allowance to, so the contract can get that amount and put it on the auction? So in this case, if we go back to the glossary, let me see if I can open it in a new tab. We can see that Bird House has six decimals. So that means that we need, to put the amount accordingly with 6 decimals, but removing the dot. So in this case, I'm saying that I want to put into the auction 1 Bird House. Okay, so this is 1. If we add 6 zeros at the right of the 1, so that means that we're sending 1 Bird House, and this is the address for Bird House. Okay. And then finally, I need to set the key here. So in this case, my key is whale. And so I'm ready to run this transaction. So I'm going to hit enter. Again, same we're gonna do the same process to get the response from the transaction. So once we run the transaction, we get the TX hash, and we can query the TX hash running this command. So I'm going to format that for you so you can see more clearly. And now I have, well, apparently everything run good. So then finally.
So now the auction contract has the right to take one birdhouse from him.
Yep. Oh.
So now he's going to create the auction, and it's going to take that from him to make sure that there's an initial seller amount in the contract.
Yeah. And in order to do that, this is the JSON that you need to send to the create auction message, so you can create an auction. So I'll need to fill some of these fields. So I'm going to There we go. And we're going to go over very quickly in this. So the first thing that we need to set is a unique auction label. So this should be a unique, let's say a unique ID for all auctions. So in this case, maybe I'm going to say auction 01.
Keep in mind that that create auction in the factory is actually instantiating a contract on chain. Therefore, we're going to be doing this thousands of times, right? So we're probably, our labels when we do the app, we'll want to be like auto incrementing essentially, so that they don't conflict or whatever. But yeah, this is the same as doing an instantiation. Right, so then you do the address, and then you get the code hash of the address.
Exactly. So I'll need to get the contract hash from the address. So in this case, this is a contract hash. You run this command. It's also on the documentation, and you put the address. So this is for the sale contract. Now, in terms of the bid contract, I can select any other token that people can bid on when in the auction. So for that, I will choose, I don't know.
Do you want to just do secret?
Yep, let's do secret. So that means that I will need to paste here that address, and then also get the contract hash for that.
Just so you guys know, all of the skateboard brand tokens will have the same contract hash. So if you want to, you can just save that contract hash and you can reuse it each time.
Yep.
But secret was instantiated from a different binary. So
let me just, maybe some of you guys are not able to see.
So then he's going to put the sell amount, which should match the allowance he gave, because it's going to take it from his account. So that'll be what, 1 million birdhouse.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And let's say one birdhouse is worth 20 secret.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to do U secret though, right?
Yep. And then NSAT is just a epoch time to any future date. So
NSAT actually determines when it is possible for anyone to close the contract, to close the auction. We'll go into this more, but before NSAT, only the owner of the contract or the seller can close the contract. Afterwards, anyone can do it. We just need to make it 20 million for a bid.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then finally, Well, nsat is just a future date. I'm just going to the current timestamp and add it 2 hours. Just that. And then there's an optional description that you can set to your auction. So now that we have everything, I'm just going to compact this JSON, so you won't see that in my screen, but I will do it in another screen. And then I will take the command that we set, this command here, and I'm gonna paste that command again, and I'm gonna replace everything that we need to replace. So the first thing that we need to replace is the auction factory contract. So the action factory contract, again, is the one that you got from instantiated the contract. In this case, this is the one, the 2K4. Then for the message that we're sending, I'm going to replace it with the JSON that I built. So here we go. I have a compact version of that, so I'm going to just paste it. And finally, we can just set the key again, and that's pretty much it. So we're going to just hit enter again, get the contract hash, the TX hash, and wait for the transaction to be broadcasted. Okay. And as you can see, well, I'm gonna just, well, this is what you get when you run that transaction. You get a full thing, a lot of logs here with different addresses and stuff. But if you get at the response, at an object with a key response, and you see the value, it says that the tokens have been consigned to the auction.
So Luis, can you show them your balance of?
Yeah. So if I go to Kepler, I can see that now I have 249 beer cows, right? I was having 250, now I have 249. And that means that now the auction was created. So in order to query that auction, well, I need to, actually, I needed to copy the auction address.
You just query the list of active auctions.
Yep. So I'm gonna query the contract factory. So release all the auctions that I created. So query compute query. Then I'm going to go and page the auctions factory. And then I'm going to send a query that is called list active auctions. If I run that, I can see, well, let me format that for you. I can see that this is the auction that I created, and this is the address of the auction. So as I mentioned, each auction is actually an instantiation of a contract. So there's an instance of the auction contract with this address, and this is all the information for the auctions. This is the pair, which is breed cow secret, the sale amount, and the minimum bid for one breed house. So at this point, we have one auction. I'm just going to rapidly create two more for other tokens. So I'm going to use plan B. This has 2 decimals, so that'll mean that I'm gonna do 1 for that. Maybe I'm just gonna leave secret for all of
Yeah,
those.
that's good.
And I'm gonna do 1. So this is another auction that we're going to create. Remember to change your label, otherwise it will fail.
So Luis, you first need to do the allowance, remember.
Let me just generate the compact version of this. Yeah, perfect. And yeah, first of all, we increase the allowance. Here it is. So now the sell contract is plan B. And the
Same
amount,
factory contract.
yeah, same factory contract, but the amount is that, right?
Yep.
So I'm gonna run that. Just wanted to confirm. Okay.
Nice.
And then I can create the auction. So I'm going to get again the command from here. Well, actually, this is a create auction. Yep. So we're gonna run the create auction. Just paste the new JSON we created. So it looks good. So let me just.
Nice. Notice we're doing 630,000 gas. We're not sure what the gas is. We'll dial that in when we start doing the UI, but we're just making sure it doesn't fail at the moment. Let's test that so we don't really care. All right, great. So now he's going to query and just see, get the list again. So we should get 2. We should have 2 in there. I think 2 is enough for now.
Yeah, so we have 2 auctions, one for Brick House Secret and one for Plan B and Secret.
All right, so that's the prerequisite step. It only took us the first hour, so we're gonna have to go into hyperspeed for the next. But
yeah, but
I think it's important. It's really important to understand how this works because it really affects the way we're going to develop the application.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. So okay, so now we're going to move on to building the application. So in this case, we're going to build an application on React. So the only thing that you guys need to be aware of is that using the latest version of Create React App is we're having issues with an underlying library that we're using, which is some from the Griptape package and Secret.js. We're having problems making it to work to the latest version of Create React App. So what we're going to do is to use a template project for Create React App for version 4.0, 4.7.1, I think, is a version of Create React App. So maybe we want to share that with you guys, but for now, I'm just going to.
Yeah, if you have problems with this, just reach out to us in Discord.
Yeah, but for now, I'm just gonna get that template for me. So in this case, I'm going to copy a project from the tutorials. Okay, so now well, this is pretty obvious, but set create a directory for your project, whatever you need. In this case, I'm not going through the process of running the create React app due to the thing that I just mentioned, but I'm going to create a project basically based on another template. So I'm just going to copy the Hello Griptape tutorial, and I'm going to call it secret auctions.
You're missing a C, yeah, in auctions.
So now I'm going to go to the secret auctions project. And now, here we go. As you can see, well, I need to install my dependencies and install Griptape. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is like a simple React project. It doesn't have show you the package.json. This is how it looks. And I'm going to do yarn. Well, in this case, we're going to use yarn, so I'm going to remove the package lock so we don't package lock. Use yarn. So I'm going to run yarn to install all my dependencies. Let me know, guys, if the font is readable.
It's like React.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Kent. So let's wait a little bit, guys. Sorry for that. For me, this is low, but I've know that I've heard of people telling me that it's pretty slow, this process. So I think that's a good sign.
You only have to do it once, hopefully.
Yep. We're also doing these tutorials for Vue guys. So for anyone who is a Vue enthusiast, as us actually. Yeah, tomorrow we're going to do the same. Yeah.
Playing around with the idea of maybe trying to do it in Svelte as well, but that's new to us, so it would be like evenings.
Yeah, just for you guys to understand that Griptape is not really, it's framework agnostic. So you can use it, you can even use it without using any UI framework, and you'll be fine. Obviously, it will require more work, but yeah, as you can see, we're solving a different problem. I think building UIs is one problem, and React and Vue and Svelte and those frameworks do a really good job helping you to do that. We're trying to do the same approach, but to interacting with contracts and connecting to a blockchain. So. Oh, it's taking a little bit.
It's the part where we just fast forward.
Okay, so let me. Okay, so we're good. So let me just open the app on. I know you guys are familiar with Visual Studio Code, so we're going to use that for this. Okay, so we are kind of ready. Before we jump into modifying the code, we need to install Griptape also. So we're going to do yarn add staker.die Griptape.js. So that will add Griptape. I'm gonna wait for that. I'm gonna close this.
Okay, so you basically took a previous project that you had, Luis, right? It's just a basic React app with. Did it have any code in it from the Hello Griptape?
Nope.
No. So it's just a blank React app, essentially. What you would get if you did React create app. But like we said, that it's just a little bit. We're having this issue that React has a million dependencies, and I guess one of them broke. So with the latest version, and I don't think we were able to go back to an earlier version of create React app. So
yeah, we're still figuring out how to fix that, guys. So for sure, I think we are going to come with a solution to that soon.
And then he just did yarn add Griptape, staker.die/Griptape.js, and that just brings in the Griptape framework software that, and then we're ready to go.
Yep. So now we're ready to go. But as you can see, here's the dependency, Griptape.js. This is the latest version that we have. And well, everything else that is needed for React. So the first thing that we're going to do is just to jumpstart the application. So you can see everything is working properly. This also takes a little bit of time, so bear with me, guys. Okay. So I'm gonna just zoom in so you guys can see the result of this application. The Hello Griptape app, and that's it. Okay. So at this point, we have a blank new React app. Okay. And the next thing that we need to do is to, well, for all of you that are familiar with React, it's pretty straightforward. But for you who are not, it's pretty simple. We have an index file, which is like our main entry point of the application, and basically it bootstraps the app. And then we have a component called app.js, which is a React component. And if we go to the index.js app, we'll see the react.render function that actually takes the app component and render it to the screen, right? So basically, at this point, this application is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. It does almost nothing that then renders a component. In this case, if we go to a component, we can see that we're exporting a function, which is a functional component in React, and that is actually rendering text, which is hello Griptape. So now the first step that you need to do in order to start interacting with contracts is something that we call grip your application. Again, with all this skateboard terminology that we use, grip is the step that you do when you have your board and you put the grip tape on it. So basically, we're trying to do an analogy to that by gripping your application, putting grip tape on it. So the first thing that you need to do in order to do that is to do some imports. The first import that you need is an import called a function called Griptape. There's another one called getKepler account provider, and I think that's pretty much it. So Griptape.js. Now, once you import those, basically the end goal for gripping your application is to call the grip app function. Basically, the grip app function will take care of everything that you need to start interacting with contracts and to start using Griptape. So the first thing that we need to do, that we need to pass actually to the grip app is set the res URL. The res URL or the node URL is the node that we want to connect to. So in this case, we have already a node that you can guys connect to, which is api.fullstart.gripjs.com, and you all guys can use that to connect. Okay. So the next thing that you need to define or that you need to get is the provider, something that we call provider, and we're going to go deep on this concept later, but the only thing that you need to know for now is that there's a function called getKepler account provider, and that if you call that, you will get the provider, and that's pretty much it. And then finally, we need to define a function. Okay, this function we generally call it runapp, and what runapp does is you need to, as the body of this function, you need to specify the bootstrap process or the method of your framework or your application that will start that application itself. So in this case, for React, the React.render function is the function that we call in order to start rendering or showing our application or starting the application. So this is what we want to be the run app, what we want to be in the body of the run app function. So therefore, in the case, for example, for view, we will need to call the mount function of the view object to start the application. So basically what we put here is whatever your application needs to render itself. And the reason for that is because Griptape takes care of some of the basically wraps around or takes care of the bootstrap process of your application, but at a specific point in time. So generally, Griptape does certain things that goes before actually doing that. So the first thing, well, and finally, we need to actually call the grip app and just pass in the three functions, or the three things that we define. In this case, the res URL, which is the node that we want to connect to, the provider, which in this case is a Kepler account provider, and the run app, which contains the code that will run when Griptape is ready to bootstrap the application. So if we do that, and we go back to our application, we can see that apparently nothing changed. And I'm gonna just open my my console or my DevTools to see that everything is okay. But at this point, the application is ready to be connected to the blockchain. There is another step that you need to run before you can do that. But at this point, basically, you can start interacting. Well, this application is gripped and ready to be connected, let's say. So this is like the first step. So at this point, that's everything you need to do in your application. There's nothing else that you need to do. Now, now that we have finished the bootstrap process, well, the gripping process, there's another process that you need to run called the bootstrap, or bootstrapping the application. So what that will do is to enable Kepler. So now Kepler will be ready to start signing transactions in case that we want to, obviously. And also we are going to be able to start interacting with certain queries that requires an address. In this case, that requires an account provider. I'll go deep into those concepts later, but for now, we're going to move on and start doing the bootstrap process. So now that you have a gripped application, you can bootstrap the application. And as I said, that will enable Kepler and some other internal stuff of Griptape. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is to go to our app, component, and I think for now we're just going to maybe put this as a title here. Right, and we're gonna call it secret auctions. And now we're going to create a button in which we're gonna handle a click event so we can start bootstrapping our application. So I'm gonna import let me just consistent with I'm not using any fancy tools like slint or any formatter, so bear with me there. And this is the bootstrap function, right? So the bootstrap function, as I said, will connect Kepler and do some external stuff, and is required for you to call that if you want to start signing messages or interacting with specific queries or messages for specific contracts. So in this case, what I'm going to do for now is just to call the bootstrap function. Well, I'm going to call it connect, let's say. And I'm going to bind a a click event. So I'm going to say onClick. And I'm going to call the bootstrap function there. So let's see the result, right? Whoa. So I'm going to going to go back to application. As you can see, we have the title, secure auctions, and we have a connect button. So I will click it. Before I do that, I want to show you what happens if I don't have, for example, Kepler. If I haven't logged in on Kepler. So if I click connect, you can see Kepler will pop up automatically. I can put my password. Kepler today is kind of slow. And as you can see, it's requesting me to connect Kepler to Pulsar 2. So I will approve this also. Now, at this point, the application is gripped and bootstrapped. So we are ready to go with interacting with contracts. Okay, so if I refresh, Kepler won't pop up again because I was already connected. And the way that you can debug if everything was properly set up, you can go to your local storage, and if you see a key connected with a value connected, that means that you are ready to go. That's So at this point, we have the application bootstrapped, and the next thing, let me just quit this a little bit. The next thing that we are going to do is to start building a client, a contract client, so we can start interacting with a contract. So in order to do that, we're going to create a new folder called contracts. And inside that folder, I'm going to create a file called auctions factory .js. So the contracts folder, this is just for organizing all the contracts that I'm going to use throughout the application. And right now we want to interact with the auctions factory contract because we want to list the active auctions. So we're going to do a definition, a contract definition, then we can create a contract client to start doing that. So first things first, for all of you that are not familiar with contract definitions, what those mean, think of contract definitions as a description of what your contract has. So again, the same way that in object-oriented programming you have classes and objects, classes meaning blueprints and objects meaning what they call an instantiation of the class. You can think of it as a recipe for making pies, and the pie itself being the recipe, the blueprint, or the class, and the pie itself the instantiate version of that class. We do the same here. We have a definition of the contract, which contains all the different queries and messages that the contract can do, and then we have a method that can get that definition and create something that we call a contract client, that then you can use to call those messages and those queries. So there are a few APIs that you need to get from Griptape in order to start doing that. So the first thing, well, for now, the only thing that you'll need to get is a create contract method, and I'll import that from Griptape. And the next thing that we need to start doing is to create the definition for this contract. So the definition is nothing more than a simple object, a plain old object that has a specific structure. So the structure of the object for this definition, in this case, I'm going to call it the auction factory definition. I'm gonna short definition. And this has two specific properties, or a definition has two properties. One is the messages property, which is an object, and the second one is a queries property, which it might be obvious, but basically will hold either the messages and the queries of your contract. In this case, we do not require messages because we're just going to do queries. So for now, I'm going to delete the messages property, and I'm just going to set the queries property. Now, inside the queries properties, there is an object that contains functions. Okay, so basically from now on, we're just going to define functions, and those functions have, again, a very specific format that you need to follow. So the first thing that you need to know is that, well, you can put any name to the function. So in this case, I'm going to say get octave actions as a query that I want as the name of the function. And once I created,
should we match so it helps them see how it is the same as what we were doing in the CLI, calling it list active auctions?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and again, this is a name this is an arbitrary name. So it's up to you to put whatever you want to put. There's no specific name that you need to put. In this case, in order to match the names of the queries itself in the contract that we are interacting with, we're gonna just.
Do you want to just show them the CLI really quickly? Just go back to the CLI where you did this query before. So remember, after we instantiated after we created a contract, we then listed the auction so that we could see after we did the auction, we did list active auctions right here.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're now doing in a contract definition that we'll be able to call just like as a simple function within the rest of our application.
Ignore the result for that because this is another contract. This is another one that I created. Okay. Just open a new tab there. Okay, so yes, what we're going to do is to list the octave auctions. Okay, so the thing that you need to understand is that if I go to the CLI and see, I can see that and see how the command looks. I can see that first we need to specify the contract that we want to make the query to. So in this case, I'm just going to open again my notes here, and the 2K4 is the contract that we use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are the active auctions on this contract. And the next thing is the JSON encoded message that you're going to send to the contract. And as you can see, these specific JSON have a very particular structure in which the first property, it only contains one root, let's say, property, which is the name of the query that you want to call running to this contract. So for example, if let's say I misspelled or I just make a typo here, this active auction, I'm gonna get an error and it's gonna tell me, hey, there is an unknown variant for list active auction. The possible variants that you can use is list my auctions, list active auctions, plural, and list close actions, and is key valid. So basically, these are all the different queries that you can do to this contract. And the way that you do it is that you pass in a JSON in which there is a property that is in the root object that has the name of the query that you want to call. So in this case, we're going to try to do the same in the contract definition. And in order to do that, you just need to define exactly that JSON that you send when you query. You just put it that here. So in this case, list active auctions is a message that we want to call, and it is an empty object, right? So this specific JSON that you are sending here is the one that gets returned for any queries functions on the queries object. Okay? And that's pretty much it. At this point, we have a contract definition for an action factory contract that can actually call the list active auctions query.
Luis, is it accurate to say that the whole goal of an auction of a contract definition is to basically, in a way that is very repeatable and clean and easy to debug, but at the end of the day, what we're doing with it is trying to create JSON objects that we can then pass to the blockchain to query contracts and send transactions?
Yeah. Basically, you can think of it as just a way to organize either queries or messages in a very clean way so you can send them out to the blockchain.
Right. So, I mean, the devil's in the details, and it's deceptively not simple. But
exactly.
But all we're doing is basically creating formatted JSON from this definition.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, guys, the way this contract that this API is designed is for you to easily start interacting with contracts, because under the hood there's a lot of things that you need to do in order to do this, and we're trying just to abstract all that for you so you can just focus on, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, I need to list the active auctions. Let me create a query for that, and that's pretty much it, right?
Cool.
So now that we have created the definition, we want to create now an instance. We want to create a contract client, and that's what create contract does. I'm gonna do this directly here. It is not necessary to create the contract inside the same file in which you define the contract definition. People were asking about it, and it's not necessary. It's up to you, the way that you want to set up your application. If you want to have your definition somewhere and then you want to then have another file to create your contracts on, that's fine. But for this particular case, I'm just going to do it here. So I'm going to create a variable that holds a contract client. In this case, I'm just going to call it auction factory, and the create contract receives an object that has 3 properties. The first property is an ID. The second property is a property called @, and the third property is an object called definition, which you might wonder is the actual definition that we just created. So now we need to fill up the ID and the at. So the ID is just an arbitrary string that you can use that gets used internally for Griptape. So this is up to you to name it the way you want. I will recommend to use a name that you can easily type later. So yeah, just taking into consideration that this is just for internal use of Griptape, but yeah, make it simple so you can, because it is useful for other APIs that we're going to learn. And then the next step is to paste the address of the auction factory contract on the ad um, property. So
You'll notice right here that what he just did was he's instantiating using create contract. He put the address in the instantiation parameter, not in the auction factory definition, and that's really important. And what that means is you can have one definition and use it for any number of versions of this contract. Now, auction factory, there's only one version, but if you think about it from a SNP 20 standpoint, where you could have 500 SNP 20s, you get to use the same the same contract definition over and over and over again. All you have to change is the address that you put in when you instantiate it.
Yep, that's correct. Yep. So basically, at this point, now we have a contract client that we can use to call the list of the active auctions query. And this API, one of the things that I like about this API is the way it reads. So when you create a contract, always remember to say, okay, I'm going to create a contract or a contract client, which ID is the auction factory in this case, which is at this address, and this is the definition for it. So it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And as you can see, remember this. Obviously, everything is typed and documented, but remember this. The structure is pretty straightforward. So now that we have a auctions factory contract client, we can use it whatever we want. So why don't we go to the app.js and try to call that query. So let's go to the auction, to the app, import the auctions factory. I'm going to import it from the contracts auctions factory file. And then I need to set some things up first. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just to call the function to see what returns, okay? So in order to do that, I'm going to create an async function, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. That is, I'm going to call it exactly the same, list active auctions, not for any reason in particular. And here, I'm going to create a variable that holds an auction factory contract, auction factory, get list, call the list of the auctions function. And then maybe console log the response so we can see what it returns. Before I move on, now that I have a contract client, the one thing you need to start remembering from this point on is that all queries and messages returns promises. So I'm going to show you how what's the specific types of all of that is later. But for now, think of it as we need to await for the response in order to get the proper result of the promise rather than the promise itself.
And this is a sort of perfect use case for promises because the blockchain works in 6-second blocks. So how long this is going to take, especially from a transaction perspective, can vary significantly. So doing it asynchronously is really important.
Now I'm going to write a little bit of React code, which I'm going to use a use effect to call a particular function when the component is mounted. And then I'm just going to call that function that I just created, right? So remember to set your dependencies object empty. So this is called once when your component is mounted, right? And I think that's pretty much it. So let's give it a shot. If I go to, if I save my application and then this reloads, you can see that if we go to the console, we can see that we are getting a response, an object that if you take a closer look of how it looks, it is exactly the same object that we get when we do a query on the CLI. So basically, as you can see, the result of the query itself is what we're getting here. So that means that we're really good and that we are ready to take that information and render it in our app somehow, right? So in order to do that, I want to render this information. I'm gonna create some state. So I'm gonna call it active auctions. And I'm gonna use everything I'm doing. And for instance, everything that I will do on this application will be using functional components. So for anyone who is who knows about React, I won't use class-based components. Sorry. So use state. I need to set the state. Should be an array. So I'm going to set it as an empty array as the initial state for the active auctions. And I need to set the set active auctions. And doing it active auctions set active auctions. Okay.
So this is just so you can save what we get into state, so we don't need to keep querying it, Luis.
This is for us being able to render the information that we get from the
this is when you start doing React is when I start asking nude questions. So
yeah, that's fine. So okay. So as you can see, the object looks like this, right? It has one property called list active auctions. That has another property called active, and this is an array. So we want to actually get this directly rather than to need to go through all these objects, right, to get this array. So what I'm going to do is to destructure the response into getting the active, and then set that as a set active as this, and set the active auctions using the set active auctions function. So I'm going to destructure this to be list active auctions, and then another property inside of it, which is the active. I'm going to call it active. Well, I think that's fine. Active. I'm going to call it result. And then we're going to set active auctions result. And that's pretty much it. Now at this point, we have the state. We populate the active auction states here in the set active auctions. And then finally, we can maybe create a order list to maybe show some of the information. So now, for now, we're just going to render let's say the pair for now. But I think that before I do that, I want to render octave options function. Let's do this is octave options dot map now I'm just going to do item dot is pair. Oh, remove that. Yeah, pair. That's pretty much it. Then actually this will be li. Render octave options. So set the key for each element. I think the key will be the pair also.
Probably the auction address, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, address. That makes more sense. So I need to refresh because I did it very quickly. It has one, so it's very strange. But well, I'm gonna
Maybe
fix
it
that
has to be
in a
like.
few.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix that in a few. But as you can see, now we're listing or we're showing the information that came from the blockchain. I think the issue is this one. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, we are getting the auctions from the blockchain. Do that. Set the octave auctions, which is a React state, and then render them on the UI. In this case, on the list.
Can you continue to console log the response from the blockchain? Just because I want to, because the next step, it would be good to be able to see what we don't get from this. Yeah, cool.
Do you mean the whole object, or is that the result, the active?
Yeah, the result. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So one thing to think about here is that this application could have 3,000 auctions all running simultaneously, right? That's the way it's built. So you think about that. So this factory contract is not giving you everything. It's giving you a good amount of information, but not a total amount of information that you might need. So I think the next step probably, Luis, is to actually query the auction directly from each one of these. Would you agree?
Yep, sure. In order to do that, we will need to actually create a definition for the auction contract itself, right?
Yeah, and in practice, you might try and just use what you get there to render enough. Like we might be able to store default information about each token just based on its pair, and we may be able to, parse the pairs, so that we don't need to actually query. And then the only time we actually have to query the auction is when we go to an auction page where you need as much information as possible, right? But you're not querying the blockchain 500 times if you're listing it, But I think for this, it would be good to just see how to see that.
Yeah, that's fine. So do we query the auction info for each contract? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So in order to do that, we're going to create another file called auction. This will hold the contract definition for the auction contract. So remember, we have a setup of 2 contracts, one for the factory contract and one for the auction contract itself. Sorry if I'm being very redundant, but I just want to make that point really clear so we avoid any confusions in the future. So now, again, create contract from Griptape. I think one of the most important items on Griptape are part of Griptape. Then the contract definition. Again, sorry about not setting up properly the tooling. There we go. Now, definition. In this case, is the auction def. And for this one, again, we are just querying right now, so we're going to create a queries property, which value is an object, and then get auction info, I'm going to call it. And then for this particular query, this is how the query looks, right? So auction info, it doesn't receive any parameters. And that's pretty much it. Now for cons auction. Well, before we move on to that, there is a really important thing that you guys might want to know about contract client. So as you can see, each contract client is bind to a specific address, right? So that means that for each contract client that you are creating, you will need to, you can only specify one address. Therefore, you can just interact with, let's say, with that contract that you are setting the address to. So in this case, rather than creating a contract here, we are not going to do that actually. So I can just remove this, I guess, just export the auction definition, because at this point, the contracts for the auctions are not known by us prior to developing the application, because we will not use it. So I'm gonna go to the app again. Yeah, let's just remove that console log here, because Uncle Sandy told me to do so. And I'm gonna import the auction def from the contracts auction. And at this point, we have the auction definition, and we might also want to bring the create contract, because again, we need to create contract clients for each of the auctions, because each auction is a contract itself. So I'm going to bring the create contract. And now I'm going to create another function right below these ones. We'll create the proper contract clients for each of the auctions. So I'm going to do a function. I'm going to call it init auctions. And the init auctions will do the following. So firstly, we need to get the auctions addresses. So maybe we want
So,
to.
Luis, can I just maybe I was writing in the chat, so maybe I didn't hear. But the reason this is different than what we did the first time is because we're instantiating these at runtime. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, not because we're instantiating them, but because we don't know the address until we query them.
Well, what I mean, not instantiating the contracts. I mean, we're instantiating we're creating the client at runtime. We're creating the contract client.
We're creating the client at contract runtime. That's right.
Cool. So usually, in the vast majority of the time, you work with contracts. You're just interacting with one contract. You know what it is, like an NFT or something like that. So you can have a definition, you just call it. But in this case, we just created a brand new contract, or we could have just created a brand new contract. We don't know. We're listing out a bunch of different contracts, and now we want to iterate over those, for instance. So yeah. Anyway.
Yep, that's right. So what I'm going to do here is to for each of the Octave auctions, I will use the create contract to create a contract client. So I think, let me do this. So first, I will get the addresses for all the Octave auctions. So Octave auctions.map item.address. We'll get all the different addresses, and then addresses for each. I will create the create contract. So this will require an ID. This will also require at definition. In this case is auction definition. Yeah, and as Sandy mentioned, this is really a specific use case of how to interact with contracts, because usually you interact with contracts that are known, which addresses are known prior to developing the application. But this is really a specific use case.
It's true, except that you could see a lot of use cases in which, an NFT marketplace, any marketplace is going to put you in this situation where you have SNP 20s. People can generate new tokens. They can enter their own tokens, that type of use case. So it's just a little bit more advanced, I would say, but probably but very valuable.
Yeah, sure. And for this particular case, I'm going to use the address as the ID, and also, and obviously I need to use it as the ad, but in addition to use it as part of what I need, I'm going to use it to identify the contract with Griptape. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about how that works in a minute, but yeah. And this is all I need to do in the options.
One second. So we're at 3:00 right now. We're just going to keep going a little bit longer because we got a little bit of a late start today. I think we probably started 20 minutes after. So we'll just go as far as that. But this is like the last step we're going to do today.
Okay. So now that we have the init auctions, I need to wait for the least Octave auctions to do this. So maybe I need to either call it after I list the active auctions, which will make sense. So for now, I'm just going to call it here. Maybe we want to change that later. So later. And if I go to the app, I made a typo. Nothing changed. So we are seeing both the auctions listed, but at this point, we should have available 2 new contracts to query from. As you saw in the auctions factory, when you call the create contract, you get an instance of the contract client ready to be used. In this case, we are not doing that. We are basically, as you can see, calling the create contract, but we're not really saving any reference to those contract clients. And this is when another cool API comes into play, which is a ref contract function. So the ref contract gives you the ability to, let's say, well, internally, Griptape has something called contract registry. The contract registry is just a piece in memory that keeps track of all the different contracts that you are contract lines that you are creating with the create contract function. So ref contract, you can give an ID of a contract and you will get the reference, the exact same reference as you will get if you get the return, the return from the create contract function. So essentially, that's what I meant to have some sort of readable or known ID to your contract, so you can ref contract them and get an instance and get the reference to the contract client. So that's what we are going to do. So now that we have these contracts created, either I create a new page or I list.
Maybe
Well,
just in that list object that you have, because then you'd be referencing it right there, right in the render active auctions.
yeah, I might because I don't want to confuse people, doing multiple promises and all of that stuff.
Okay.
Maybe I want to create just a section in which I can see all the information for the auction. So maybe
Got it.
here there's hey guys.
So at this point, all you've really done is created 2 new clients, and they're stored in this registry. You haven't actually queried the blockchain to get the auction info. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So
Someone's asking whether or not the registry persists after restart.
no, the registry. Do you mean restart if you reload the page?
I believe so. Yeah.
No, it doesn't persist. It'll be really difficult actually to persist. So, but yeah, it does not persist. It gets called at runtime. So if you want to do this process, make sure that you're doing it under, very, very early in your either in your component or in the bootstrap process of your whole application. So for now, let's see how a query, what information we can get from an auction. Query compute query. Well, do the auction info.
We're a little blocked by your.
Oh, by my. Hold on.
By our images. Oh, that's fine. People can see what it is. Yeah.
That's it. Okay, awesome. Let me see.
In fact, now that I look at this, all you really get here that you don't get from the first one is you get the description when it, I don't know if the ends at is in the original one, and then you get the actual IDs or actual contract addresses of the SNP 20s, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it's not giving you that much more. But anyway, this is just to demonstrate how to do this if we wanted to.
Yeah, and I think the information that I'm going to show for now is a description, to keep things simple. So I'm just going to create a paragraph, and here I'm going to set. The first thing I'm going to do is conditionally render this block, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is if auction, well, not in if auction, some of you guys might notice I'm not a React developer, so bear with me if being dumb stuff. I don't know how to format correctly, but I'm just gonna leave it like that. You guys see. So cool. Now I can auction dot. I'm gonna do pair, and let me see what else do I have. I don't have the pair here, but let's do.
You have the underlying tokens.
Yeah, so cell token info name. Well, for now, I'm just gonna put the address here so you guys can see. Sorry, the structure of the response is a little bit. Obviously, I'm trying to keep things simple so you can see exactly the things on Griptape that I want you guys to see and not get confused by either React or weird stuff. So yeah, now at this point, nothing has changed on the app again. But what we're going to do is to set the auction information. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is to create a link here. And I'm going to bind a click event to this. And this will set the information. So let me just do at auction info, call that. Verify function get auction info, and then that will mean this is a function that in which we're going to call the auction info contract for the specific contract that we're going.
And you'll do it by reference to the registry, right?
Okay, so I'm gonna pass the address to the get auction info.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to get the reference to the contract. So I'm gonna just call it auction contract. Then I'm going to do ref contract address, remembering that we are using the address as the ID of the contract. Okay. now that I have a reference to the contract, I can get the response. I'm gonna get the description. Let me first see how auction info, then description. Okay, that's what we get. Then await auction info, auction contract, sorry, dot get auction info.
Very cool.
Okay, so we get the description, and what else did I render here? The address. Well, this is pretty obvious, but address is
Contract address. In the sell token. Yeah.
Auction address here.
Oh, auction address. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Right. Well, I'll format this later. But then, well, actually, that doesn't really matter. What I really need from here is that, and then set auction. That's pretty much it. I think that's it. So if I go back to the app, everything loaded correctly, and I get my, I think I need to it can look like links. Yep. Well, I can fix that later, but if we, well, I need to prevent and all that stuff, so hold on. How do I do this? I know that this is not correct, guys, but I'm just gonna do it. Well, let's put a button. We're not going. I don't want to confuse anyone by weird stuff, so let's just use a button.
We got to get David a webcam, or get him on here without the webcam for next one, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine.
Our resident React developer. I think he's in the chat actually. We expected you here, buddy.
Yeah, David. So let me see. So no, did we run the Octave auctions? Set auction was not found. Did we run it? Yep. Let me just debug in case we are. I mean, the reason for this is because of the render. So I'm gonna just force that. Okay. If I click, okay, let me just see if I'm getting exactly what I wanted here. Octave. Okay, perfect.
Can you console log the registry, please?
Console log the registry.
That's what it's saying. It can't find that contract, right?
Yeah. contract.
So you just console logged just address, but now in the thing you have item.address. Is that maybe I'm mistaken? Never mind.
No. Everything
Oh, because
looks.
you did addresses, right? Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get addresses. Then I created the contracts. So everything else looks good. And now in the render active auctions, I'm creating get active auctions, build more. Okay, that's fine. I'm setting the, let me see what I'm getting from here. Maybe I'm missing something. Okay, so we're getting exactly what we want, but the ref contract is showing an error. So now let me see a bit more. Okay, so we're having this issue in which the ref contract is not getting let me see something, guys. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Contract registry. Interesting. Getting an error, contract not found with ID or address.
So it can't find it in the registry, right?
Yep.
David's asking if you can console log 39. I don't know why, but
If he can console log what?
line 39, just the addresses.
Oh, I did it, but yeah, sure, David.
Where does Luis? Where does the contract registry sit in memory? Is it able? Are you actually able to access that? That's why I was asking if you can console log it.
No. I mean, it's internal for Griptape. It's not exported.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so this is an array of strings, and then what are we doing with these strings? We're taking those and we're creating the auction, right? We're instantiating it.
Oh, yeah, I know what the issue is. Sorry, guys, my fault. So, few more. There you go.
Okay, nice.
And well, the description is equal for both. Let me put some information. It is
The auction address is just giving you auction. Oh no, it wasn't giving you an address.
auction address.
Yeah.
I think that's that one.
Yeah, it's okay
I
that
was
it's the
just
same.
testing you guys, so you guys
Yeah.
were paying attention. But yeah,
It's still okay that it's the same because you're not referencing you're not getting the sell versus the buy or anything like that.
yeah,
Oh no, these are two different ones. So okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, two different.
Oh, great,
But
great.
as you can see, guys, this is a simple example of showing either information from one or the other. And as you can see, in my opinion, the ref contract is a very good tool to use very often, because in this case it's obviously required to do this particular thing. But it may be the case that even if you're interacting with contracts that that prior to start development, its address, you can set a file with, create all of the contract lines that you need, and you can just reference them maybe in a store or something like that, in which you don't need to actually bind two files. The file that has the version, or the export object, and the file that reference it. So even if you use this, it's a good, you can say it's a good practice, because you will end up with um, your app will end up not having a lot of code. When it gets bundled, you'll have less. The size will be less because of you're not concatenating more and more files. Just reference it.
So Louise, like, let's just give a quick example or thought experiment. So we create now one thing that we didn't talk about, guys, is that that's really cool, and we'll get into this next time. Is that SNP 20s and SNP 721s have built-in contract definitions, so you guys won't have to actually do the contract definition for those. We have like an official one, let's say, that you can use. But let's say you had a contracts folder and you had like 500, I don't know, 30 SNP 20s, Louise, and so you would create we would have the you would create in the registry, not setting it to a variable or exporting it. You would just create all of the different SNP 20s that you wanted, that you might need in an application, in this case 30 of them or something. Then at any place within your application, if you needed to get the balance of that token, you would just get it from the ref. Right, you would just get it from the ref contract, right? You just say ref contract, pass in let's say the ID, the label of the SNP 20, and then say get balance, and you would be able to get it. Is that a good example of how you would use it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, we've gone over time now, but so I think we'll just wrap up here. Thanks everyone for bearing with us. We had some scheduling internally. There was a misunderstanding about scheduling. I'm not sure who's right. I might be wrong. I might have started. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But so thanks for bearing with us. And yeah, tomorrow we're going to basically do the exact same thing in Vue. I'm not sure if we might get further or not. This we went pretty slow with, but anyway, we'll make up for that in the next one.
Yes. And I think we're going to create a repo on the Sacred Eye organization that will have this code. So yeah, so you guys can actually see the code, play with it if you want, and yep, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. People were asking questions about whether or not this would work for SNP 20s, SNP 721s. I wonder about things like whether or not the allowance works for SNP 721s, for instance, because you'd have to give an allowance to a specific token. So it might be that the contract just isn't set up that way, but we can think about it. But anyway, there's a lot more that we're going to get into with this, and our goal here is to build an MVP, a really simple application, something that you guys can see what we're doing, and then take this back yourself and just start seeing how far you can go with it and starting to do interesting things. So yeah, thanks again for everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.